Come on, Dad, get up and do the freedom dance.
Welcome. I got the mic on. Welcome to JW Night Talk. And I don't know what you thought of the intro, but that was off of Watchtower Help Admin. We on Saturday we ran all the movies. That was the premiere. Frank Lee Annan was on, the creator of the site, and that was his finale. That was the final song. And it was nice to see Stephen get up and realize that, he doesn't have to be in the Watchtower anymore. And, he could get out and enjoy some time with his family. And that's what he was missing out on. And so it had a nice happy ending. And that's kind of what we're going to promote on our channel. So tonight we have an interesting topic. It's it's a landmark. This is a landmark annual meeting broadcast. So we're going to look at get the screen pulled up here and present that screen to everyone. Let me see here. There we go. So we're going to get on to the JW.org website. And here we go. Here's the website. When you go to JW.org this month, we're going to go right back, just so everyone can see how we're getting there. And this is no big secret. So we just click our Jehovah's Witness website. We get in there, and we see that. Let me just pull up, give you a full screen here. This is what you get. No more corrupt politicians. So we go right down to what's new. Everyone's wondering what's new for this month. Here it is, JW Broadcasting, November 2023 annual meeting, part 1. Now, this is the annual meeting that we've been reviewing with everyone for a while here. So we've been online. We're a little bit ahead of the game on this side of the fence. So we're allowed to look at this stuff before it actually comes out. But today is the day, and all they're going to talk about here today is the first part. This is going to be a multi-part release. So you see the guy there on the screen. What does he look like to you? This is how they're presenting him. We were looking at it, and he looks like a businessman, like he's polished businessman. He's going to go over the new policies, the new JW org. He's kind of a new member. So we're going to get right into this and put it on the full screen here.
Welcome to JW Broadcasting for November 2023.
Kind of a nice beginning.
On October 7th, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania held its annual meeting.
Now, this guy's name is Christopher Mavor. He's a helper to the service committee. That's what it says there.
Usually, you would be viewing this portion of the program in January 2024. However, you are now able to enjoy 4 talks this month, November 2023. These talks have been especially prepared at the direction of the governing body. They want the worldwide brotherhood to be aware of the content as soon as possible. Please pay close attention and enjoy the program.
Well,
Okay,
it's an absolute.
so you notice there's 4 parts. So this is part 1. So what we want to look for is number 1, there's 2 parts to these breakdowns that we look at. We're going to look at the spiritual content, but we're going to look at the business content, because there's a whole business move here, a whole business strategy. This organization has taken a turn, and there's something going on spiritually that is causing a shift within the governing body of this organization. And that's why this is a landmark meeting. Now we're going to go on and listen to these guys a bit.
Delight to be here today, isn't it?
They love that applause, eh? They just love it.
And you're going to get happier as the morning goes along.
Yeah, we are.
The annual meeting, as an
Okay, we're gonna
example,
speed this up
I'm
a
going to
bit,
pick a year,
because we'll be here all night.
2013. Now, that annual meeting has been called Landmark. We've even stated that. We called it a landmark annual meeting. Well, you might think that all annual meetings are landmark, and many of us here would agree with that, but that one was very special. At that meeting, the revised edition of the New World Translation in English was released. Very special annual meeting. And that landmark Bible release continues to be a blessing for many people around the earth as more languages are added. Now, 10 years later, exactly 10 years later, we have arrived at another truly landmark annual meeting. This time, Jehovah has...
So 10 years ago, they came out, their landmark meeting was the release of this New World Translation 10 years ago. Time flies. So this is now another landmark meeting.
helped the faithful and discreet slave to discern deeper principles and understanding from that very same word of truth. And this understanding is now going to be passed on to you. Are you ready? Are you excited to hear it?
Well, we're excited. We're excited. Oh, look at all those people clap.
Let's listen very carefully to this next symposium. And again, each speaker will introduce the next one on the program. Please pay close attention to Brother Gage Flegel as he begins with a talk entitled, Love Jehovah, Praise Jehovah.
The day was Nisan 11, 33 CE. Jesus was busy in the temple teaching just a few days prior to his death. He silenced the scribes and the Pharisees with his irrefutable logic, at the same time sharing some of the most profound teachings of his earthly ministry.
Okay, I'll
For instance,
slow it
pay back
down.
Caesar's things to Caesar, but
I'll
God's
slow it
things
down.
to God.
He talks a little
Then
fast.
one of the scribes came forward and asked Jesus,
There's
what
1.2.
is the greatest commandment? How did Jesus respond? His response would have far-reaching implications even down to our day for anyone claiming to be a Christian. We find his response in Mark chapter 12. I invite you to turn there. Mark chapter 12, and notice please with me verses 29 and 30. Mark 12, 29 and 30. Jesus answered, the first, or the most important commandment, the greatest commandment is, hear, O Israel, Jehovah our God is one Jehovah, and you must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind, and with your whole strength.
Now, we're just going to stop there for a bit. So when we watch any Watchtower production of JW.org, Jehovah equals Watchtower. Watchtower equals Jehovah. Jehovah equals JW.org. JW.org equals Jehovah. Governing body equals Jehovah. What the governing body says is coming from Jehovah. Jehovah might as well blast it down from heaven because it's from Jehovah if the governing body says it. So long as we keep that in mind, folks, take everything with a grain of salt. I do when I watch these videos. When they say Jehovah, in my mind, I think Watchtower, because this is not Jehovah blasting down from heaven and saying any of this stuff. So give me a break here. Let's carry on.
You must love Jehovah.
Love the Watchtower.
Love God. It sounds
Love the
simple,
Watchtower.
right? Well, billions of people claim to love God, but they love pleasures more. Or they're willing to fight and kill their fellow man. Or they refuse to live by God's moral standards. All such things contradict their claim to love God. Well, Jesus demonstrated that love of God requires more than a feeling of affection. Jesus stressed how completely we must love God with our whole heart, with our whole soul, with our whole mind,
We're
with our
already
whole strength.
1.2.
Does that leave anything out? Our eyes, our ears, our hands? Well, the study notes on verse 30 help us to understand that this includes our emotions, desires, and feelings. It includes our intellectual faculties and power of reason. It includes our physical and mental strength. Yes, our whole being, all that we are, we must devote to our love to Jehovah. Love for God must govern a person's entire life. Nothing is left out. Our hands.
Okay.
Well, the stuff.
So love for Watchtower, love for JW.org. This is what this is about. So listen to this again. Love for
Study
JW.org.
notes on verse 30 help us to understand that this includes our emotions, desires, and feelings. It includes our intellectual faculties and power of reason. It includes our physical and mental strength. Yes, our whole being, all that we are, we must devote to our love to Jehovah. Love for God must govern a person's entire life. Nothing is left out.
So love for Watchtower must govern a person's entire life. Nothing can be left out. So that's what we're dealing with today. On this whole broadcast, if you can stand back, get outside of the Watchtower for just a moment, look in as it's a business, and it's a business that's operating. Now, right now with this business, with this Watchtower business, what problems is the Watchtower business having right now? If you were to go onto the news, well, the news media, that's a huge problem. The news media, us guys, we're a huge problem to the Watchtower. Because this false information, everyone coming online, all this information's out there, that's a huge problem to the Watchtower. Now, the biggest problem to the Watchtower, well, there's two big problems. The first problem is they're losing members left and right. There's so many holes in the ship and so much water pouring out in every direction. They got to do damage control. You're going to see a lot of damage control as we go through these 4 parts closely. We're going to probably take every Tuesday night maybe or something like that and go through this month. Now, this is a big business model. It's losing money, losing members. Members means you're losing money. What's the other problem? Lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And these guys are going broke, like they're paying so many lawsuits. They have to up the game, and they have to make this model create more money. So this whole broadcast, keep this in the back of your mind. It's about making more money. And the first thing that they're going to work on as a good sales organization, because that's what it is. It's a sales organization selling their memberships to everlasting life. That's what you're buying into. It's a membership to everlasting life. You got to love Watchtower, not Jehovah. Watchtower with your whole soul, whole heart, whole mind. So they're getting you with the love. You got to put everything, every ounce of yourself into the Watchtower. That's where we are at so far.
Well, shortly after emphasizing the greatest commandment, and again, we're thinking of Jesus. He's there in the temple. Shortly after emphasizing the greatest commandment, Jesus shines a light on both bad and good examples of love for God. First, he sharply condemned the scribes and the Pharisees for their pretense of love for God. Now, if you want the full condemnation, it's found in Matthew chapter 23. Those hypocrites, they gave even the tenth or a tithe of small, tiny herbs, but they ignored the weightier matters of justice and mercy and faithfulness. That was the bad example. But then Jesus gave his attention to an outstanding example of love for God. If you're still there in Mark chapter 12, notice.
Now, I want to go back there because I know I played it a little fast, but he talked about Jesus, the example of Jesus, and he brought up a really weird point on Jesus, talking about their love for God and their tithing. Jesus went into the temple and turned over the money tables. He had no use for...
Than all the others who put money into the treasury chests. For they all put in out of their surplus, but she out of her want put in everything she had, all she had to live on. The coins of the needy widow were worth about 15 minutes' wages. Yet Jesus expressed his Father's view of her worship. He commended her whole-souled sacrifice. What do we learn? Well, clearly the lessons go far beyond material giving. Motive in our worship of Jehovah is important to him. Jehovah doesn't compare us with others or even previous versions of ourselves, younger versions of ourselves.
So Watchtower doesn't compare ourselves to last year, how we used to donate last year. Watchtower, this is the start of it. So they're going to use this example, this widow that threw in everything, more than she had. She threw in it all. this is what their Watchtower is asking for. Just follow through on this whole meeting. It's quite interesting.
Jehovah simply wants love for him with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. Not as they were 10 or 20 years ago, but as they currently are now. Now, a question in reference to love for Jehovah. Is it reasonable for Jehovah to expect us to love him with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength? Is it reasonable? Yes, absolutely. Why can we say that? Because Jehovah loves us with his whole heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Does
How
Watchtower
so?
love us?
Well, let's turn to Isaiah chapters 40 through
Here,
44.
we're going to speed this up.
And there we'll consider a few of the many reasons we have to love Jehovah. And at the same time, we'll consider some examples of the depth of Jehovah's love for us. So our first example is in Isaiah chapter 40, and notice please verse 11. Isaiah 40, verse 11. There it says, like a shepherd, he will care for his flock. With his arm, he will gather together the lambs, and in his bosom, he will carry them. He will gently lead those nursing their young. Here we find a beautiful word picture of Jehovah. Jehovah is a tender shepherd. At Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 15 and 16, Jehovah says, I myself will feed my sheep. The lost one I will search for. The stray I will bring back. The injured I will bandage, as we notice in the illustration. And the weak I will strengthen. What a touching picture of compassion and tender care. If we fall and hurt ourselves, or if we stumble in the briar patch, so to speak, Jehovah bandages us. He helps us to heal. When we seek his help, he doesn't reproach us. You should have known better. No. But he does try to help us not to stray in the future with reminders from his word. And what is the effect on the sheep? Well, as we saw in the illustration, he feels secure.
You notice that? Jehovah doesn't want anybody straying. We're going to keep running this through here. So Jehovah doesn't want you to stray. They use a whole bunch of examples.
And becomes physically tired. How does he recharge? Do we plug into a charging station like an electric car? No. We're marvelously designed to recharge through rest and the food that we take into our bodies, our fuel. The calories, the energy, and food are evidence of Jehovah's love. Not only does it recharge us, but it brings us delight too. What did you have for breakfast? Maybe here at the assembly hall. The average glazed donut contains about 190 to 300 calories. We hope you're not counting calories during this annual meeting season.
Mark should.
But whatever your choice, the energy and food is a gift of Almighty God to help sustain us, to recharge us.
Let's run through this BS. Okay, I know I don't have a lot of patience for
In
this.
Psalm 18, David used very poetic language to describe Jehovah's remarkable ability to rescue us. Psalm 18, verses 8 through 10. Smoke ascended from his nostrils, and a consuming fire came from his mouth. He made the heavens bend as he descended, and thick gloom was beneath his feet. He rode on a cherub and
See, they got to make Jehovah, the Watchtower, look like it's going to save us. And they use all these old scriptures, Old Testaments, whatever they can grab. And so if you're going to build up an audience, you're going to sell a product, you're going to sell everlasting life, you're going to sell that we're it. You got to sell the fact that we're going to protect you. Through our organization, you are going to be protected. And that's what these guys are selling.
came flying. He swooped down on the wings of a spirit. Verse 16 says, he reached down from on high. He took hold of me and pulled me from deep waters. Verse 19, he brought me out into a place of safety. He rescued me because he was pleased with me. Can you imagine Jehovah reaching down with his right hand of righteousness and rescuing you from a trial? Why? Because Jehovah loves us with all his soul, his whole being.
Watchtower doesn't love you with all your soul. They love your wallet, they love your contributions, and they want to know that you're out doing the preaching work. So they give this false facade about Jehovah, the Watchtower. We're going to run this a little further.
Makes the dead alive and calls the things that are not as though they are. Why? Because his promises are absolutely certain of fulfillment.
So they're talking about the resurrection.
Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11.
And no one knows this, but they talk about it like it's going to happen. Like no one knows this. In one sense, they say you're going to be resurrected in another body. So you're not even going to be, like they don't know. They play.
John 5, 28 and 29, or Revelation 21, 3 and 4. We think about the effect that the disappearance of sickness, pain, and death will have for us and for our loved ones. The resurrection. Do you long to welcome back loved ones? It's as good as done. God's
it's good. It's as good as done. How can you sell a product like that? Like you can't sell that. Even if you read the Bible as a Jehovah's Witness, it's up to us individually according to the Bible. It's not up to the organization. They can't guarantee this stuff.
Personal name is a guarantee. Jehovah makes the dead alive and calls the things that are not as though they are. Why? Because his promises are absolutely certain of fulfillment. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. There, Jehovah says, I well know the thoughts that I'm thinking toward you, thoughts of peace and not of calamity, to give you a future and a hope. We might say Jehovah loves us with all his mind. Jehovah will make his very own thoughts toward you.
See, Jehovah knows your thoughts. He knows what's in your bank account. He knows how much money you have. He knows if you're giving just a little bit. He knows if you're giving your whole heart. You see, this is what they're trying to come across. Jehovah knows, so you better give it all. You better give it all. Jehovah knows. So let's just go on here. There will be forever.
1931, Jehovah's Witnesses. And for what purpose has Jehovah chosen us as his witnesses? There in Isaiah 43, notice verse 21. It says, the people whom I formed for myself so that they might declare my praise. Jehovah has chosen us to declare his praise. Love Jehovah, praise Jehovah. What a privilege.
Love Jehovah, praise the Watchtower.
Jehovah could use
Love
rocks, he could use
Watchtower,
trees, he
praise
could use
the
birds, he
Watchtower.
could use beasts of the field, but no, he's chosen his faithful servants. He's chosen you and me to declare his praise.
Okay.
Full of love.
We
Do not
all
be in dread. Do
were
not become
told that.
paralyzed with fear. Have I not told each of you beforehand and declared it? You are my witnesses. Is there any God but me? No, there is no other rock. I
He's
know of
getting
none.
right into this.
Jehovah says, do not be in dread. Do not become paralyzed with fear. This may yet come.
He's actually
My heart
not
is
a
filled with
bad
peace
speaker.
and
You
calmness.
know, when you put him up
I
against
am more
Mark
determined
Sanders
than ever to tell
your
others
voice,
about Jehovah. I am proud to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Kind of our first
Yes,
time to get
Tatiana's
to
love for
watch him
Jehovah
in
moves her
action
to continue praising him.
in a major part.
Well, the Bible doesn't tell us how many hours we have to share in the ministry each month, but it does tell us that love for God must be our motivation. The greater our love, the fuller our share will be in accord with our personal circumstances. We prove that we are Jehovah's Witnesses by our conduct and by our zeal in praising him, formally and informally. May our deep love for Jehovah move us to tell as many people as possible about our great God, Jehovah. Well, the next three talks of this symposium will discuss how love for Jehovah motivated his people in ancient times.
Okay. So that's his talk. His talk was about love for Jehovah. He emphasized on giving more. The old lady that gave everything. He really drew on that. They're going to draw on all these points of giving, tithing, all the way through here. Anything to do with money. Money. If you're giving money, that means that you love Jehovah. I mean, not the watch. Well, you're giving the money to the Watchtower, but you love Jehovah. And the Watchtower is using your money. They need it. They need it desperately. Okay, let's check the other three talks out. We're gonna speed this up really fast for the clapping and stuff.
The third talk will discuss how love for Jehovah motivates his people in modern times. And finally, how the second greatest commandment should motivate us. Will we hear some adjustments? Will we consider a fresh approach to our ministry?
Some
Stay tuned.
adjustments.
First, we'll give our attention to Brother Garrett Lush, a member of the governing body, who will discuss the theme, love for Jehovah in ancient times.
We're sure clapping hard.
All of us appreciate and enjoy receiving a gift, but to be able to give a gift to others brings us even more joy. As the great giver of all good things, Jehovah rejoices in giving and wants humans to enjoy giving. He is the first giver. He's the greatest giver. He gave life to spirit sons and to humans. He gave Adam a lovely wife. He gave them a paradise to live in. In turn, Adam and Eve were
Probably,
given the
say-
opportunity to give of their time and energy to take care
Out of all
earthly
the
home
governing body
and to
members,
spread
I would
the
say
garden of Eden
he's
into a global
actually
paradise
aged quite well.
inhabited by righteous
You know, he
humans.
probably looks after his health. Maybe
Later in
he doesn't
human
look like
history,
he's into
Jehovah
the
created
scotch
the
like the
nation
other
of
guys, because
Israel
you know
and gave them
how
a
alcohol, and I used to
beautiful
drink a
land
lot
full
too.
of good
A
things.
lot of Jehovah's Witnesses,
How
that's
could
all
the
we do is
Israelites
drink.
show their
You know,
appreciation?
you can't do anything else,
Jehovah
right?
again
You can
provided an
drink alcohol.
opportunity
So
for
everyone
his
goes home and
people
has
to
a glass
give.
of wine.
In this case,
And
he
then
gave
that
them a
branch, if you have the
command
money,
to
you can buy a bottle of
What
scotch.
is that?
Um,
The tithe means to
you
give
know,
a tenth
I
of
don't
something.
think he drinks.
Israelites
I
were
think
to
he
give
actually
Jehovah
looks
a tenth
after
of
his health
all
a
their
bit.
produce
Garrett.
and animals. We can read that account at Leviticus chapter 27, verses 30 and 32. Follow me as I read from the screen. Verse 30 says, every 10th part of the land,
They're
whether
getting
from the
into the
produce
money
of a
again.
field
The
or
10th
the
part.
fruit of the trees, belongs to Jehovah. It is something holy to Jehovah. Verse 32 says, as for every 10th part of the herd and flock, everything that passes under the shepherd's staff, the 10th animal should become something holy to Jehovah. Did you notice that Jehovah said the tithe was a holy gift that belonged to him? And yet, what did Jehovah do with that tithe? He generously gave it or passed it on to the tribe of the Levites, who had no land inheritance. Again, follow along on the screen.
Did you get that? So they gave Jehovah their tenth, and Jehovah gave the money to the ones that were running the temple, right? He's going to talk about the Levites and stuff. So it sets the precedent for the rank and file of the Jehovah's Witnesses to give everything, like that widow. Give it all. And Jehovah, because you're giving it to Jehovah, but you're actually, the Watchtower's taking your money, but you're giving it to Jehovah, and Jehovah is giving it to these guys. These guys live in a paradise. They actually have a very nice place where they live. So let's listen to this.
As I read Numbers chapter 18, verse 21. Now see that I have given to the sons of Levi every 10th part in Israel as an inheritance in return for the service they are carrying out, the service of the tent of meeting. Verse 24 says, For I have given to the Levites as an inheritance the 10th part contributed by the people of Israel, which they will contribute to Jehovah. That is why I have said to them, in the midst of the Israelites, they should not take possession of an inheritance. Think how this arrangement proved to be a blessing to the Levites, who devoted their time and attention to Jehovah's service at the tabernacle. The arrangement also proved to be a blessing to all Israel to have one tribe completely devoted to caring for the tabernacle and later the temple of Jehovah. But how would the Levites show their appreciation and love to Jehovah? They also were commanded to tithe. According to verses 26 through 29, they would contribute a tenth of their contributions, which they received, to the Aaronic priests for their support.
Okay, so you got to read between the lines with Watchtower. So what they're doing is they're going to the Bible, and there's not a lot of places in here where you can get money out of people. Jesus, that was the one example that Jesus noticed that was in the Gospels. He noticed that old lady because Jesus could see things, right? And he just brought that to the attention about giving. And he talked about people in general, how people are. Watchtower is cunning. They take that. Now we have a different speaker, and he's focusing on all the old tithings and stuff. But they're making this tithing, even though we're not under the Mosaic law, and they come and say that. He says that. But they make it like we are. You're going to watch this. It's very, very cunning. This whole talk is about money. It's about getting the money out of the rank and files. And they're using every scripture possible to do it. Because Jesus says our worship is not about giving. It's not that's the old Jewish system. That was their Jewish way about giving. The new way is about love. Being a good neighbor. That's really that simple. Jesus was a rabbi. He read the scriptures. He was well versed. At the age of 12, he was in arguing at the temple. Yet he wrote nothing. He wrote nothing down about rules. He says it rests on two commands, guys. There's nothing to write down. Love your neighbor. Love God. It's that easy. There was no giving. There was no tithing. He turned over the money tables. But let's see how Watchtower takes those money tables, turns them back up, and they built their organization upon the Jewish system of things. It's built upon the Jewish temples that Jesus was against. So Watchtower is turning those money tables over and talking about it here. Let's just listen. It's quite interesting.
It seems the Israelites were also required to set aside an additional tenth to cover the expense of attending the 3 national festivals to Jehovah. Every 3rd and 6th year, these funds...
So I missed that. So he's using old examples, and he's making that modern day, of course. So in the old examples, also the Levites had to give. So they had to give a 10%. They had less to give, the Levites, these ones that were in full-time worship. So you guys that are in full-time worship, you pioneers, regular pioneers, you have to give your 10%. Same as the Levites. They want it out of you. And the rank and file that's working full-time, they want your 10% plus more. He's very clear about it here. Now he's going on to talk about these festivals, the giving at these festivals. This is all Old Testament stuff. We're not under it. But yet they turned those money tables back over because they're good money tables. They make good business. And it's all in the Bible, right? It's all Jehovah, right?
Funds were given to the Levites, alien residents, widows, and fatherless boys in the local community.
Okay, so I'm
So what
glad he
have we-
brought that up, because the giving was to help fatherless boys. It was to help the needy, the orphans, the widows, and even the New Testament in James 1:27 says that. Says a religion that's pure and undefiled is one that's helping orphans and widows. He's parroting the same thing here, but yet the Jehovah's Witness religion does none of that. They do not help orphans or widows. If there's any help going to the orphans and the widows, it's because ones in the congregation have extended a helping hand. But the organization does not have a fund. If you're an orphan or a widow, you cannot go on to JW.org and find out how you can get some help. They don't do it. They send you down to the food bank. That's how bogus this stuff is. This is just about getting money.
We learned about giving and tithing. As we have seen, the tithing arrangement provided a wonderful way for God's people to show their love and appreciation for Jehovah and to support pure worship. Imagine also how those who were disadvantaged, the alien residents, widows, and fatherless boys, also appreciated this loving provision. But did you know there was something else very interesting about the tithing arrangement? Nowhere in the scriptures did Jehovah arrange for any human to monitor whether each person was really giving the entire tenth of his produce and his animals. And no one was assigned to enforce compliance with the tithing arrangement. So, although it was required by law, tithing was entirely between the individual Israelite and Jehovah. Thus, the arrangement allowed each Israelite to demonstrate his personal love for Jehovah. But what if somebody secretly held back and did not give Jehovah the whole
This is
tithe,
the important
perhaps
part.
giving less than a tenth? How would Jehovah feel about that? Would he be inclined to bless those who were stingy? That's not likely. On the other hand, how would Jehovah feel about those who generously gave even more than a tenth? Well, we don't have to guess. Remember when faithful King Hezekiah promoted pure worship and encouraged tithing? What happened? Let's see it 2 Chronicles chapter 31, verses 4 through 6.
Okay, so what I'm getting out of that by reading between the lines is that what if a person is secretly holding back? What if a person's secretly holding back? Think about that. Have you ever been privileged enough, I guess you have to be male, to go and collect the contribution box at the hall? You'll pull out the checks and stuff like that. You're supposed to have two people. Usually the secretary's involved, and then they have a witness. So if you're exemplary, very seldom they use brothers that are on the mics, but usually a ministerial servant or an elder. And you go to the contribution box and you pull it up and you're actually looking at all the checks. Lots of people in the day that I lived, they used checks, and they'd put envelopes. Sometimes they'd put envelopes and they'd put cash in them sometimes. And sometimes they'd put their names on them and stuff like that. So the elders had an idea who was donating what back in the day, and they knew who was holding out. And if you notice, the ones that were privileged more, and I noticed this while I was in the organization, the ones that were privileged more donated more. They were used on the HLC, the building committee. No, that's a hospital liaison committee. The building committee, what's it called? The LDA or something? The building committee. Who knows the abbreviations for it in the comments? But I forget. But anyways, back in the day, or today, if we compare it to today, it's not like that. It's not like it was when I was in. Today, it's all on your debit card. You're hooked up to the organization. They actually have your first and last. They have to have all your information. You're putting all your information in when you're donating to them. And they're tracking you online. They know if you're holding back. And they have averages. And they're looking at averages now. And they have spreadsheets. And they're pulling this up, and they know what the rank and file's donating, and they know who's holding back. And then they look at, you might think, well, I'm contributing at the contribution box. Well, they look at those contributions, and they're not that much anymore. Everyone's doing it online. So let's carry on.
Furthermore, he commanded the people living in Jerusalem to give the portion to the priests and the Levites so that they might adhere strictly to the law of Jehovah. As soon as the order was issued, the Israelites gave in great quantities the first fruits of the grain, new wine, oil, and honey, and of all the produce of the field. They brought in abundantly the tenth of everything. And the people of Israel and of Judah living in the cities of Judah also brought in the tenth of cattle and sheep and the tenth of the holy things that were sanctified to Jehovah their God. They brought it in and put it in many heaps. So how did Jehovah feel about the generosity of his people? Let's not
See, that I would read those scriptures if I was looking for money out of people. This whole part one is about money, the tenth, heaps, putting it in heaps in front of Jehovah. It's a big Bible. We could talk about a lot of things. We could focus in on Jesus, how he was good to the neighbors. You know, they do focus on that a little later on, but we'll get into that later. This is a business. This is the first thing out the gate. We need more money. They can't be clearer.
note verses 9 and 10. Hezekiah asked the priests and the Levites about the heaps. And Azariah, the chief priest of the house of Zadok, said to him, from the time they started bringing the contributions into the house of Jehovah, the people have been eating to satisfaction, and there is still an abundant surplus. For Jehovah has blessed his people, and this great plenty is left over. Yes, Jehovah richly blessed faithful ones who generously supported the tithing arrangement. Sadly, Israel eventually lost their generous spirit and neglected the tithe. So, some years later, Jehovah inspired the prophet Malachi to remind the nation of their privilege of giving. What did Jehovah say? Let's see at Malachi chapter 3, verse 10.
So that's a cool transition. Jehovah's people forgot they quit tithing. It was very sad. See, we're not under that. Jesus did away with all of that, turned over the money tables. But today, it's a huge thing. We're talking about this. We can learn an example. Jehovah wants everything from us. But it's Watchtower. Remember, that's Watchtower.
The entire tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house, and test me out, please, in this regard, Jehovah of armies says, to see whether I will not open to you the floodgates of the heavens and pour out on you a blessing until there's nothing lacking. Can you imagine that?
See, what I can imagine is back in the day when this really happened, if it did happen, like it says in the Bible. Well, let's say it did happen, just like it says it. The organization back then wasn't paying lawyer bills all over the world to fight CSA crimes. These are crimes that this organization's fighting. The organization back then, I don't know, they were the government. It was all blended in. They were everything. You see, they're trying to use this old method of ruling and apply it to their little group of people, 8.5 million that they claim they have. But we're in a big world, and there's governments. Paul said you have to be under the governments. We're going to get into that later. But it's funny how these guys take this Old Testament stuff, yet we're not under it, and they make it very current.
It was as if Jehovah was challenging each Israelite to test him. Would Jehovah really bless those who gave him the full tithes so that they lacked nothing? Yes, absolutely. Today, of course, we are.
And the other thing was tithing was like a tax back then. You see they were ruled by this religious group, this cult that wandered through the desert. They called them Jehovah's people. So if you want to look at the history of it, and then they built cities, and then they took over lands, and then they formed communities. Well, they didn't have taxes back then. They had tithing. Tithing is the same as taxes. It went to them, but they still had to probably pay taxes if they're under the Romans, and then tithe as well. But it depends. There was a time that they were just they were wandering, and they were just ruled by their own people, and it was like a tax.
We are no longer under the Mosaic law with its tithing requirement. Rather than being commanded to give a tenth of our income, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7 says, "Let each one do just as he has resolved in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver."
And then at this point, if I was a JW still and I was watching it and I was listening to all this other stuff, I'd be sitting there sinking back into my seat wondering, how the heck am I going to afford 10%? That's a lot of money when you think of that you have to pay a mortgage or you're paying rent. The cost of living has gone up. Like, we live on this side of the fence. We do not get meals served to us at Bethel. We don't get our laundry service done for us every day and our house cleaning done for us every day at Bethel. We don't have that. On this side of the fence, we work for everything. We work hard. And then we're taxed to come to all these meetings and then spend all of our time preaching. And now I'm sinking back into my seat as a rank and file watching this. How am I going to pay the tithing? And then this comes up and I'm thinking, oh, a good thing we're not under this. Yeah, I forgot. We're in the New Testament. I'm glad he's bringing this out. Let's see what happens next.
So what have we learned from our brief discussion of tithing? That Jehovah created us to find joy in giving, and we give generously of our time and resources because we love Jehovah, not because someone is observing and keeping track of what we do. We also learned that Jehovah richly blesses obedience that comes from hearts full of love for him. But is there more we can learn from Jehovah's dealings with ancient Israel? Yes, we can learn from the Nazirite arrangement. What was that? The Nazirite arrangement is described in Numbers chapter 6. Let's read chapter 6,
I find this
verses
interesting.
1 and 2. It says, "Jehovah spoke further to Moses and said, 'Speak to the Israelites and tell them, if a man or a woman takes a special vow to live as a Nazirite to Jehovah,'" notice that Israelites, both men and women, could volunteer to be.
So I don't know if you noticed how quick they are. So my shoulders go down. We're under the 2 Corinthians. We're no longer under the law, so we don't have to tithe. And now we're hopping back over to this Old Testament Nazirite stuff. Now I'm tensing up a bit. What's this all about? Do I have to give now?
Become a Nazirite. This meant that they had to meet certain requirements that were not imposed on Israelites in general. What were those requirements? Numbers chapter 6, verses 3 to 7 explains that Nazirites had to, for one, avoid alcohol and anything made from the grapevine. Second, avoid cutting their hair. Third, avoid touching a dead body.
I thought this was interesting. So the Mormons kind of did this, and probably Garrett's a good one. He probably doesn't drink a lot of alcohol anyways. So he's probably one of the ones that could get up and talk about this openly. But avoid alcohol and anything made from the grapevine. Mormons believe in this. They don't drink alcohol, anything from the grapevine. I even asked one Mormon, do you drink grape juice? And I don't think they do, actually. But maybe that's where they got this from. Maybe the religion, if they're discouraging their members, you want to be like a Nazirite, you're going to be more righteous. Quit drinking alcohol, because that's going to give more money for donations, right? You got more money for donations, you quit the alcohol habit. Avoid cutting their hair. Well, they're not allowing that. You got to keep your hair cut. So it's kind of a double standard Nazirite. What about the beard? Nazirites could grow long beards too. They don't allow that anymore, or they're still not allowing that. Some people say they are in some other places, but I don't see any beards on anybody. Avoid touching a dead body. Well, who wants to do that anyways?
By voluntarily submitting to these additional requirements, Nazirites demonstrated their love for Jehovah in a special way. How so? Imagine that you hire someone to perform repair work on your house. After performing the repair, the worker notices other repairs that are needed, and he tells you he will do those as well at no additional charge. How would you feel about this worker? Would you
I
not
love him.
appreciate his extra efforts to go beyond what he was asked to do?
Yeah,
You might even give him extra pay.
exactly.
And how would the worker feel? Because he's a generous person, he will experience the joy of giving more than what was asked.
See, if you enjoy the Watchtower's movies that they're making, he's given this example, and they went beyond the duty, and they're giving you these nice movies. Wouldn't you donate more? Wouldn't you donate more? That's really
The
what he's
same was
saying.
true of the Nazarites. Jehovah did not require anyone to become a Nazarite, but he created this arrangement. Why? Evidently, he knew that some faithful Israelites would voluntarily submit to extra requirements out of their great love for him. And their appreciation for Jehovah would prompt them to do even more for him. No doubt this brought joy to Jehovah's heart to see his people manifest a generous, appreciative spirit in this way. So what can we learn from the Nazarite arrangement? That Jehovah deeply appreciates and favors those who show their love for him by going beyond what is required. Today, this is true of ones who have their circumstances or the circumstances to pioneer, and those who are able to serve as volunteers at branch offices and in other theocratic assignments. As we know, Jehovah discontinued the Mosaic law with its provision for tithing for Nazarites and for the many animal sacrifices. Colossians chapter 2, verse 14 says, Jehovah erased the handwritten document, that is, the law covenant. However, are there lessons we can learn from these past arrangements for supporting pure worship? Yes. Romans chapter 15, verse 4 reminds us that all the things that were written beforehand were written for our instruction.
That was clever. That's clever. So what they're saying is, okay, we're not under the Mosaic law, but here's this scripture in Romans. Paul wrote it, apparently. And all these old scriptures are for our benefit, so we can benefit in principle. So now we can introduce all this stuff, get it back into the system. Very clever scripture.
So does Jehovah's organization today benefit from the principles behind the tithing and Nazarite arrangements? How do we as individuals support modern-day arrangements for pure worship? And does a closer examination of the arrangements for pure worship in ancient Israel indicate a need for further adjustments today? For the answers to these questions, let us give our attention to Brother Samuel Hurd, a member of the governing body, who will share the next talk in this symposium entitled Love for Jehovah in Modern Times.
Whew. Here I thought I wasn't going to have to empty my bank account. Now there's another talk coming from another governing body. These guys are next to God, so I got to listen to it. Am I going to have to empty my bank account?
Try to make
now?
a connection with arrangements that we have for modern day worship. Maybe you were wondering what corresponds to tithing today. As Brother Loesch mentioned, although tithing was a requirement for the Israelites, it also provided Jehovah's people with regular opportunities to demonstrate their love for Jehovah by giving him
love for the
their best.
Watchtower. By giving,
of course,
the
we no
Watchtower
longer
your
have a
best.
fixed amount of our income that we're commanded to give to Jehovah. The tithing arrangement ended with the Mosaic law, and Galatians chapter 6, verse 2 says, we are now under the law of the Christ. True Christians today give Jehovah just as they have resolved in their hearts. But the tithing arrangement,
My shoulders would go down at this point. I would think, okay, now I don't have to do the tithing anymore. Finally, he's going to straighten these guys up.
it illustrates something that Jehovah still expects of his people today.
What?
Remember, the tithe was to be...
What? Did you hear that? Jehovah's expecting the tithing still? Get out of here. Today? I got to replay this.
Jehovah just as they have resolved in their hearts. But the tithing arrangement illustrates something that Jehovah still expects of his people today. Remember, the tithe was to be not just a tenth, but the best tenth of a person's produce and his animals. Jehovah deserves nothing less than our very best. With that in mind, How can we give Jehovah our very best?
Well, I thought tithing was out for a moment, but it's back in. And it sounds like Jehovah's expecting it. This is getting crazy. Let's just speed this up and see what happens.
Of course, we try hard to obey all of Jehovah's commands, but there is one command that stands out as an identifying mark of true Christians today. What is it? Let's read it together on the screen. At Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 and 20. It says, "Go therefore and make disciples of people of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all the things I have commanded you. And look, I am with you all the days until the conclusion of the system of things." Were you surprised that we read that verse? Of course not. We see from these verses that the disciple-making work is a requirement for all Christians. And you, dear brothers and sisters, have built your lives around that scripture.
Okay, so the preaching work's not out. So disciple-making work is a requirement of all Christians. So if you're not in the disciple-making work, I guess you're not a Christian according to what he's saying, what J.W. Org is saying. So you see, another form of their tithing is they want you out there gaining new members. That's what this model, it's a business model. So the business model is to have your existing members multiply and make new members. That's part of it. Now you got your existing members, or you're already convinced them, turn the money tables back over. We got to tithe. In fact, we got to do more than tithing. Jehovah expects it today. Tithing. That's what he said. Jehovah expects tithing today. So now, as a JW, I have to go home and feel Jehovah reads my heart, and we're gonna have to sit down, and we're gonna have to give more. We're gonna have to give more if we want to be acceptable to Jehovah. That's what this is telling me. Let's read this. Let's listen.
You have
some
given
more.
and continue to give your very best to obey this life-saving command, and we commend you for that. Jehovah's organization has...
So they made it a life-saving command, the preaching work. And the preaching work, by the way, now we've done other videos, and we'll do more on them. But the preaching work isn't a requirement for everyone, just so you know, especially not children. And the preaching work, Jesus only sent out qualified people, not children. Never ever sent out children. So...
always been interested in seeing how this great worldwide work has been progressing. We enjoy seeing our annual report published each year as we see the number of kingdom publishers increasing. The worldwide report helps the...
Now, how do you know if the amount of kingdom... Did he just tell a lie? Let's look at his... Let's slow this down. He's saying that they're increasing. I don't think they are. Now, how can you say that with a straight face? Okay, here we go.
Our annual report published each year as we see the number of kingdom publishers increasing. The worldwide report...
He said that with a straight face, just blinked once. No, it's one eye on the right. Looks like it's half closed all the time. I don't know if he suffered from a stroke or something. But it's hard to tell. But man, that is bogus. There's no way. They quit. I'm going to just speed this back up again. They quit publicizing their reports to the public. They're not transparent. And they say they keep increasing. So
report helps the governing body to see where to send missionaries, special pioneers, and pioneers. Let's watch a video that highlights how Jehovah's people have taken this commission seriously over the years.
When did we begin reporting field service activity? Prior to 1920, only coal porters, as pioneers were then called, were asked to submit reports. But beginning in 1920, everyone...
Just so you guys know, just a side note, these coal porters were all Masonic back in Russell's day. They don't really talk about that much, but they're Masonic, and they they started their first meetings out, Russell, at all the Masonic temples. That doesn't mean that Jehovah's Witnesses today are Masonic, but they have a Masonic beginning.
To 1920, only coal porters, as pioneers were then called, were asked to submit reports. But beginning in 1920, everyone in the congregation who participated in witness work was asked to turn in a weekly report. The 1920 Annual Service Report for the United States was the first to include the activity of congregation publishers. That report revealed that there were 8,052 class workers, or publishers, and 350 pioneers active in the preaching work. Twice a year during the late 1920s,
See, they even call it's a business, class workers. Everyone's a worker. This is a business model, and it's a religious business model, is all it is.
1 week was designated for a special worldwide witnessing campaign. Pioneers had a goal of 40 hours for that special week. In January 1939, a suggestion was placed before congregation publishers, a goal of 60 hours per month. Early on, congregation field service reports were thorough. Over the years, the forms used to report publishers' field service activity have been simplified. Reports have consistently included back calls or return visits, Bible studies, publication placements, and hours spent
That's
in the
what I'm
disciple-making
familiar with, that one.
As was the case back then, there's always a story behind a field service report.
And this is the new
The first
one.
time I walked into a Kingdom Hall,
Did you
when I
guys
was
see the new one?
16,
There's the new one.
the first time I walked
Oops.
Reports were
into the Special
Sorry.
Pioneer Service in
matter.
1966. The monthly requirement was 150 hours and 50 return visits.
It was a good incentive.
Well, we had a quota back then of 150 magazines, one for every hour, as special pioneers or missionaries. And one day we run into our fellow missionary and his wife on the way to the movies. They went every Saturday. But this particular Saturday, he says, I can't go to the movies because I don't have my 150 magazines. So I got 5 more to go, and then we can go to the movies.
This started in 1961 when we were sent as special pioneers.
Started pioneering in a trailer of 5 hours of service every day.
And getting our time was no problem. Living for a month on $100, that was a problem. So Dave said, I'm going to go out and get a job. About that time, they had put a new store in town. Beautiful. He went out to that store and told them, I'm going to work 1 day a week. What are you going to do the rest of the time? So he said, well, I knock on doors and tell them about God's kingdom. I said, really? This is my door. Knock on it.
He came in the truth.
I find it amazing all these people dedicated their whole life to this Watchtower organization, probably didn't even have kids, no grandchildren. They're at this age, and the Watchtower, this is it. And they believe the cult. They follow the 9 men. It's idol worship, of course, we know that. But they just follow them blindly. And I did it. For 30 years. So I know how easy it is just to get into this rut and just believe that these 9 men are it.
His wife came in the truth. Children are in the truth.
And they had a secretary, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
She had 7 children. And she said, well, I'd like to study the Bible too. And we would study with 7 after they had supper.
The beauty of it is that they did so well.
Yeah. After that, we studied with the parents. So by the time we got through it was probably almost midnight. And we took our circuit overseer there. He said,
Okay, we're going to
this
speed
midnight
this up.
shift.
I never felt it was a question of getting the hours in. I always try to make them quality calls, try to say something with the people, not just go there and get the magazines placed or my Bible.
They just
So we
talk
engage in our ministry not
most
because we
patients.
feel out and living forever. As we've seen, the arrangement for reporting our field activity has served a valuable purpose for many years. However, as Brother Fliegel mentioned in the opening talk of this symposium, Jehovah's people are motivated to praise Jehovah because of our great love for him. Sharing in the ministry also reflects our sincere love for our neighbors and our love for the good news. So we engage in our ministry not because we fill out a report each month. We might say that our ministry is our personal gift to Jehovah and to our neighbors. But Jehovah is realistic. He knows that many of our brothers and sisters are limited by circumstances such as advancing age or serious health issues. Others cope with the rising cost does not have. If we're giving Jehovah our best, he wants us to rejoice in what we do, not to feel guilty about what we cannot do. The scriptures associate sacrifices to Jehovah with joy. For example, Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 43 says, on that day, they offered great sacrifices and rejoiced. for the true God made them rejoice with great joy. Can you imagine Jehovah judging an Israelite unfaithful because his tenth was less than another person's tenth?
So now we're going to get into this tenth again. So he talks about judging, not to be judging, but you see, this is a religion. It's a hierarchy type religion. You got the elders, no one can touch the elders' book, not even the wife. So it's definitely a hierarchy religion. And everyone gets into this religion and they get following people like the governing body, and they just believe that we have to give all of this time to be acceptable to Jehovah. That's what we have to do. I felt that way myself. But yeah, it's interesting how these guys are getting to the tithe.
Everyone's circumstances and abilities are different. Brother Loesch explained that although tithing was a requirement in ancient Israel, Jehovah did not require others to monitor or keep track of each person's tithe. Tithing was entirely between the individual Israelite and Jehovah. The governing body believes this same principle can be applied when it comes to reporting our time spent in the ministry. Our ministry involves much more than counting time.
So he's using a parallel to tithing to the ministry. And the ministry is tithing, because you're giving up, like that one guy says, he gave up 4 days a week working to go out into the ministry. He's basically, for the business model, he's drumming up new members, bringing new members in, which builds wealth to the business, pulls new members in, they do the same, and that's how you grow the business. Everyone works for free because everyone believes they're working for Jehovah, but they're working for the watchtower. And he's going on to talk about now the tithing. The tithing is equal to the ministry, because it does cost money to go out in the ministry, a pile of money, and especially if you have to cover country territory. Up where we live, we used to have to drive for hours, put miles and miles, mile your vehicle out, and you'd go through a tank of gas every time you're out, because you drive all the way out. It'd take you an hour to get out to the edge of the country territory. So you're out there, you might as well pack a bag lunch and stay the whole day and then drive back. And you put a lot of miles on reaching people. So that's your tithing. There's a lot of money that goes into the field ministry to drum up new business.
For this reason, we are pleased to announce that beginning November the 1st, 2023, congregation publishers will no longer be asked to report the amount of time they spend in the ministry, nor will publishers be asked to report their placements, the videos they show, or their return visits. Instead, the field service report will simply have a box that will allow each publisher to indicate that he or she shared in any form of the ministry during the month. There will be one more box where publishers report the number of different Bible studies they conduct. This simplified report serves a valuable purpose. It will allow us to know the number of active publishers in each land. It will also help us to know whether certain territories are producing Bible studies and where there is a greater need for pioneers, special pioneers, missionaries, and kingdom halls. Although publishers will no longer report their time in the ministry, we all want to follow faithfully the words of Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. Whatever you're doing, work at it whole soul as for Jehovah, and not for men. For you know that it is from Jehovah you will receive the inheritance as a reward. Slave for the Master, Christ. The governing body is confident that you, dear ones, will continue to render whole soul service to Jehovah by...
It's funny how they take these scriptures and apply it to their business model about working, about slaving for them. It has nothing to do with that. But we'll carry on. It's interesting. This is all about money. And it's a smoke screen. Did someone use that word? A smoke screen? It's a smoke screen. They're using the Bible as a smoke screen to get some money out of people.
Doing all that you can in his service. And just as Jehovah richly blessed faithful Israelites who generously supported the tithing arrangement, he will richly bless your sacrifice of praise. But wait, what about the Nazarite arrangement? Is there a similar provision in the modern day organization? Certainly. We all do well to imitate the Nazarites' example of self-sacrifice and courage. However, as Brother Loesch explained, the Nazarites had to meet certain requirements that were not expected of Israelites in general. The same is true of modern-day pioneers. They have volunteered to devote a certain number of hours to spend in the ministry. Thus, auxiliary and regular pioneers, special pioneers, missionaries, and circuit overseers and their wives will continue to report the number of hours they spend in the ministry, along with the number of different Bible studies they conduct. As you know, the governing body recently reduced the hour requirements for auxiliary pioneers, regular pioneers.
So you get that? The auxiliary pioneers, all the pioneers, circuit overseers, they all have to count their time. I don't know why. Well, pioneers would, because it's a time requirement. They're comparing it to a Nazarite, and you see the levels. Now, if you're a pioneer, you're at a higher level. You're counting your time. You're going to be treated differently. And this is what this organization is about.
Special pioneers, field missionaries, and circuit overseers and their wives. It gave us great joy to do that, and we are convinced that as a result, even more will be able to join the ranks of the pioneers. Why are we so confident of that? Because of what it says at Psalm 110, verse 3. Your people will offer themselves willingly on the day of your military force. Yes, Jehovah promises that his people and young ones.
I want to see what that is. That's Psalms 110 in verse 3. I'll let this play. I'm just going to look that up on the other screen here. Psalms 110 verse 3.
On the day of your military force. Yes, Jehovah promises that his people, and young ones in particular, would reach out to do more in this time of the end. Many pioneers eventually attend the school for kingdom evangelizers. They become special pioneers, field missionaries, and even circuit overseers with their wives. We thank Jehovah for those who reach out to serve as pioneers. But let's think for a moment what this adjustment will mean for all of us. Isn't it true that reporting our field service activity each month has served as a reminder? Our monthly report reminded us to be regular in the ministry, to use our various publications and videos, and to make return visits. But what about now? Will we still?
Okay. So I got in the habit here lately of looking up scriptures, because I don't trust their scriptures and what their scriptures say. So let's look at this. You remember Psalms 110 and verse 3? It says about their military, everything's army in this organization. And that's how they've made their Bible look. Just open English Standard Version here. Your people will offer themselves freely on the day of your power in holy garments. From the womb of morning, the dew of your youth will be yours. So your people will offer them freely on the day of your power. What does that mean? There's a cross reference there. See footnote A. A is Psalms, or on the day you lead your forces. So it's kind of, that's talking about D-Day. That's the time that Christ comes back. It's not talking about it now. Your people will offer them freely on the day of your power. You see, the Bible is easily twisted, and you really got to, as you wake up more, you really got to look at all this stuff really close. Let's go back to the video. Sorry about that. Okay.
Still be conscientious about having an active share in the ministry each month. Remember that with the tithing arrangement, each individual was responsible to give their full tithe to Jehovah. Likewise, each of us will want to set personal goals to make sure we have a zealous share in the ministry. Love for Jehovah will move us to have
love for the Watchtower
to make sure the ministry continues to take priority in our lives.
Okay.
What will these adjustments in reporting our ministry mean for you elders and the circuit overseers? It will be even more important that you brothers be discerning shepherds. You will have to know the flock well. For example, evaluating a congregation's spiritual health or a brother's qualifications to serve as an elder or ministerial servant will not simply be a matter of computing averages, time spent in the ministry, literature placements, and so forth. No, you will have to know the brothers. What is their attitude toward the ministry? Are they zealous for pure worship? What is their reputation in regard to the ministry? Do they take advantage of opportunities to give a witness? Do they help others to do so, including the members of their family?
You see, to this organization, it's all about giving a witness. You're not exempt. They're going to monitor you. You're not counting in your time. If you have mic privileges, they're going to be monitoring everything about you because you're exemplary. And they're going to be seeing, just like he said, they're going to see what your attitude is toward the ministry. It's all about the ministry. You could be the best person to ever, be a good neighbor, help your neighbors, show love in your family, be an excellent dad, an excellent mom. But if your ministry suffers, you're a terrible person. That's what this organization is about. That's why this organization is wrong in its thinking. It's wrong.
As we have discussed, Jehovah clearly deserves our best, and we demonstrate our love for him by exerting ourselves in the ministry and in all other aspects of our worship. Jehovah loves you for that, and we love you for that. We know you will continue to manifest the Spirit expressed in Psalm 54, verse 6. It says, I will sacrifice to you willingly. I will praise your name, O Jehovah, for it is good. So we have no doubt that you will continue to give Jehovah your very best in the disciple-making work. But is there still more we can learn from the scriptures about the way we conduct our ministry? If so, are additional adjustments appropriate at this time? To find out, let us give our attention to Brother Mark Sanderson, a member of the governing body, who will share the final talk in this symposium entitled, Love People, Make Disciples.
Well, brothers and sisters, hasn't this been an amazing program?
So, to sum up the last talk, making disciples means making more money. The more people you have in this organization, the more money that comes in. Make disciples, make more money. This is completely a mix mash of Old Testament stuff with New Testament stuff. It's very confusing if you start reading the Bible. So let's carry on and see how Mark twists this.
This is truly a historic day in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. And maybe our hearts right now are more full of love and appreciation for our wonderful God Jehovah than ever before. We've deepened our understanding of Jehovah's mercy, his compassion, and his patience. And what about that announcement about our field service reporting? Jehovah is dignifying us. He has confidence in us. You see, why do we go from house to house? Why do we do cart work? Why do we make telephone calls and write letters and make return visits and start Bible studies? Why do we do all of those things? Why. It's because
to make more money.
We truly love our amazing and wonderful God Jehovah. As Brother Flegel emphasized in his talk at Matthew 22 and verse 37, Jesus identified the greatest and first commandment. You remember what he said? You must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart and with your whole soul and with your whole mind. But is there something else that moves us to make disciples? Yes. It's what Jesus said was the second greatest commandment. Jesus said, you must love your neighbor as yourself. So we must love God, but we must also love people. Now, why is love for people so important? Well, because when we see that someone cares about us, we are moved, even if we don't know that person. For example, maybe someone you've never met before does a kind deed for you. Maybe they open a door for you. They pick something up that you've dropped, or they help you carry a heavy load. How do you feel? Well, you appreciate their kindness, don't you? And as a result, you're more inclined to want to listen to what that person might want to say to you. You see, when we sense that someone has love for us, we open up our hearts. Well, unselfish love is so powerful. It touches the hearts.
Okay. So in this talk, we're going to see a transition our old way of preaching when we were out was preaching. We'd go out and we'd preach to people, and we'd try to get literature in their hands. That's was a big thing for years, forever. That's what this organization's been about. So this is the transition point. So the first part of this meeting was about your tithing, giving your best, is about money. And in fact, they were bold enough to say Jehovah expects 10% today, and the very best of the very best plus more. They were very bold about saying that. And then they tied tithing into preaching, into being a pioneer, being a Nazarite, they call it. They parallel that in. So now he's going to talk about a transition. In years past, we're placing literature. Now we're going to look for opportunities, opening a door for someone. It's going to be we're not pushing magazines anymore. There's a whole new way of doing it. We're going to get people into the website. So if we can get people into the website, then we can really play with their mind in our website. So let's see how they do that.
Of those who are rightly disposed for everlasting life. And Jesus said that his true disciples would be identified, they'd be recognized by the love that they had in their midst. Well, isn't it true that so often brothers and sisters say that what it was that drew them to the truth was the love they felt from their Bible teacher or from the congregation when they began to attend meetings? Well, very likely that same love was what drew you to want to become a disciple of Christ Jesus. Well, for that reason, at the 2017 annual meeting, the governing body encouraged us to begin to think more about conversing with people. And at that same meeting, you remember, we simplified our teaching toolbox so that we could become more familiar with the various tools that we use in the ministry. You see, we want to carefully consider each individual's personal situation, the concerns that they have, the interests that they have, and then be flexible in choosing a topic that we want to discuss with them. Well, for several years now, our midweek meetings have provided us with sample conversations, with suggested scriptures, and even with a suggested link to help us to continue the conversation at a later time. But is there a challenge sometimes with a memorized presentation? You know, I think back when I was a brand new pioneer. One day I was out with his sister in the ministry. As we were going to the door, you know, she was actually mouthing her presentation. She had it perfectly memorized. And suddenly this woman came to the door. She opened the door, and here she was, beautiful older lady, hair done, makeup on, beautifully dressed, looking like she was just going out. The sister was so flustered, she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, did we get you out of bed?"
I like this part.
Yeah, memorize presentations. Not always good. Well, maybe we've memorized presentations. And so,
You notice they use women at the brunt of all their jokes. Like he's told this illustration a million times, you can tell. And he gets a chuckle out of people, but he uses women. This guy's never been married. You know, he's probably in his 50s, late 50s. But he makes the women the brunt of his jokes. He could have said two brothers, or he could have used himself as an illustration, but he wanted to use women.
sometimes we felt like we're giving a talk when we're at the door. But what if the person has a very specific interest? What if they have some special need, or they're facing some terrible challenge just at the time when we're calling? Well, we want to look to the example of our Lord Jesus Christ. He set the perfect example for us. He showed love for people by choosing subjects that were appropriate for each individual. And his personal interest in individuals attracted people to the message. Well, for example, do you remember the time when Jesus had a conversation with the Pharisee Nicodemus? Now, Nicodemus was impressed by Jesus' miracles, and he approached Jesus at night probably because he was afraid of the Jews. Now, as a Pharisee and a teacher, Nicodemus evidently must have had a very great knowledge of the Hebrew Scriptures. So what did Jesus do? Well, he shared something with Nicodemus that was completely new. You see, he talked about new truths about being born again and about seeing the kingdom of God. He explained to Nicodemus that he had descended.
So he talked about being born again. Did you catch that? To Nicodemus. New truth. So what they want to do is go with this example, you go door to, you're not going door to door. Maybe you're just informal witnessing. It's more informal witnessing, and they're going to show this. And you want to take advantage of opportunities to talk to people and talk about something new, something that they don't know about. That's what Jesus did.
From the heavens, and that he was the only begotten Son of God, and that he was the way to everlasting life. Well, I'm sure you'd agree that even though Nicodemus was a teacher, he received quite an education from Jesus on that night. But now, does that mean that Jesus took exactly that same approach with everyone that he met? Well, no, not at all. You see, on another occasion, when Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman, his approach was completely different. Evidently, the Samaritan woman had a very basic knowledge of the Hebrew scriptures. So what did Jesus do? Well, he noted the things she was interested in, like obtaining water, and why Jesus, as a Jew, would speak with a Samaritan. Well, Jesus also took an interest in her family situation. He noted that she was very concerned about why did Jews worship in one location and Samaritans in a different location. What did Jesus do? Well, he talked with her about the things that interested her, that were of concern to her. He helped her to see that worshiping with spirit and truth was more important than the location where individuals would worship. And how did that woman respond? Well, the Bible says she left her water jar there at the well, she went into the city, and she gave a powerful witness about Jesus. She was so effective that the Samaritans invited Jesus to stay,
play a video on
and many
this.
put faith in him. So now, what do we learn from these two simple accounts? Well, Jesus did not use a memorized presentation. He just talked with people, and he shared with them the truths that he knew would touch their hearts. He was very quick to choose topics and words based on the interests and the concerns of the person that he was speaking to. Well, now, with all of this in mind, you may be wondering, well, you're supposed to be wondering, but how can I display that same love for the people that I meet? See, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a little bit more help to see how we can show love for people and make disciples? See, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a publication that would help us to
Poor Jehovah's Witnesses, they always need a publication to help them. Once I left the organization, I spent lots of time just reading the Bible. You don't need a publication to help you. You just need the Bible. You open up some other Bibles besides the Watchtower Bible. Open up the King James one that's on their site if you don't want to go to another source. But yeah, now they have another publication, because this is pivotal. This is a pivotal point for all of Jehovah's Witnesses. They're going from scripting, presentations, placing literature like everyone's been doing for years, and counting time. Now there's no more counting time. Now it's more of an informal type witnessing, very natural type witnessing. So let's see what happens next.
be more flexible and more responsive to the different needs and interests of the people that we meet? And what if that publication highlighted specific ways that Jesus and other first century evangelizers showed their love as they made disciples? Well, you will be happy to know that Jehovah's organization has produced just such a publication. It's a 32-page brochure entitled, Love People, Make Disciples.
Let's skip forward here. Big applause.
But now, would you like to see a little preview of what this brochure contains? Please watch the following video.
Okay, we'll slow
This new
this.
publication, Love People, Make Disciples, is being made available in both print and digital formats in over 400 languages. How is the brochure designed to help us show love for people we meet? Unlike the tools we've used in the past, this new brochure does not give us expressions to memorize, nor does it put the emphasis on leaving literature. Rather, it features 12 lessons that focus on qualities we need to cultivate to make disciples. All the lessons are based on Bible accounts in which Jesus or another first-century evangelizer displayed a specific quality in the ministry. The lessons will help us see how we can imitate the qualities they demonstrated as we make disciples. Each lesson contains a video that brings the account to life.
A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Give me a drink.
Like, okay. Hey, Mike. Yeah, I guess it shuts my mic off. I would have said, could I have a drink, please? Like, wouldn't you have said, please? Like, give me a drink. Is that what Jesus is going to say?
Each lesson contains a video that brings the account to life.
A woman of Samaria came to draw water.
Now, the other thing that I just have a hard time with, let's see if I can get it back there again, the picture.
Make it your goal to learn these basic conversation is
there. Now, they used, we watched another video where they're putting the beard on the Jesus figure there. And I don't think Jesus would be a white guy back then. Do you? Like, we have a lot of not white guys in the organization that could play this Jesus part. And why wouldn't they grow a real beard for this? Like, why all the fakeness? This is what gets me with all the JW stuff.
Give me a drink.
By cultivating an interest in people, we can talk about things that are on their minds. What truths might we share with people once a conversation is started? Appendix A highlights basic Bible truths that we'd love to teach. Make it your goal to learn these basic truths and the scriptures that support them. If you do, you will be more effective in starting conversations and in making disciples. For example, a conversation can be started by asking a simple question, such as, "Have you heard that God will soon end all suffering?" Or, "Did you know that the Earth's environment will be restored?" Sharing a simple truth at the right time
Now, I've been
is
watching
powerful.
all white guys, all white people in this.
Jesus said his sheep would listen to his voice. In other words, rightly disposed ones will recognize the truth when they hear it expressed simply. Appendix B helps us to determine whether to continue a conversation. Appendix C provides practical suggestions on how to conduct Bible studies and enjoy life forever. What if you don't feel comfortable starting conversations? Don't worry. Beginning in January 2024, the Apply Yourself portion of each midweek meeting will help us to practice the points we are learning in this new brochure. The meeting will no longer focus on presenting a predetermined topic in Scripture. Rather, students will select topics for their assignments that they know are on the minds of those in their community. By means of realistic demonstrations, audience discussions, and talks, our meetings will assist us to develop skills that will help us start conversations naturally and adapt to each person's concerns and needs. By focusing on people, we will become more comfortable and more effective as we make disciples. As you consider each lesson, think carefully about how you can demonstrate the highlighted qualities when conversing with people in your community. Ask yourself, what are their concerns and needs? As you go about your activities, be observant. Look for appropriate opportunities to help people in practical ways. Acts of kindness can open the door to share kingdom truth. Show that you care by listening to others when they express themselves.
Lots of
Share a
informal
simple truth at
witnessing,
the right
you
time.
notice, using their
Remember,
tablets.
our goal is not to memorize a presentation, but to demonstrate Christ-like love to everyone we meet. This will require patience, perseverance, and commitment. No matter where we live or under what circumstances we are preaching,
perseverance,
simply showing
and
love will help us to
commitment.
find joy in our ministry. More than any specific technique, actively expressing our love for others will help us make disciples.
So that's the new sales tool for pulling in new people. I think that's kind of it. Well, we're getting to the end of it. Let's see what else is on here. Speed this up.
So we indeed thank Jehovah for this wonderful new tool to make us more effective in our ministry. Of course, the question you may be wondering is, when will you receive your copy of this new brochure? Well, you'll be pleased to know that it's going to be made available to all congregations in electronic format and, in most places, in printed format by November 6th. In addition, this entire four-part symposium will be posted on jw.org on November 6th, so that all of our brothers and sisters will hear the information in the symposium at the same time. Isn't that great? Of course, we're all going to want to read the brochure, we're going to want to watch the videos, but wasn't it wonderful to hear in this video that the governing body has arranged to make use of this new publication beginning in the month of January during our midweek meeting. So we're going to get the opportunity to put this into practice right away. So what have we learned in this four-part symposium? In part one, Brother Flegel reminded us why we love Jehovah and how our love motivates us to want to praise him. In part two, Brother Loesch explained the differences between most Israelites and those who volunteered to be Nazarites. In part 3, Brother Hurd helped us to see that although congregation publishers will no longer report their time in the ministry, this in no way diminishes our individual responsibility to make disciples. And finally, in this part, we received a new tool that will help us to show our love for people and to make disciples. It's really amazing to witness, as Jehovah's people, the fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 17.
You notice he uses a cell phone to pull up his scriptures. I don't think they use Bibles anymore like that. Now, he talks about this new tool. He talked about the 3 points, how they talked about love. He didn't highlight that they were looking for the tithing, but it was about love. It was about increasing your ministry. But that's not what I heard on this talk. I heard a talk that was ram-packed full of tithing and giving and giving and giving. That's what this talk was about. So the talk was about giving and showing love and giving and going out in the ministry and doing more ministry. And then, oh, you don't have to count your time no more. But we want you to give. And we have a new tool. And the new tool is going to change how we do the ministry. So we need you to support. We put all this work into this new tool. It's beautiful. It's got all these website interfaces, movies, and we got this big movie theater and studio, this Jesus Center. We need money. We need money to support this new way that we're doing things. That's what I see happening here. That's what I see the highlights is about.
You remember the prophecy there. It says, instead of the copper, I will bring in gold. And instead of the iron, I will bring in silver. Instead of the wood, copper. And instead of the stones, iron. And I will appoint peace as your overseers, and righteousness as your task assigners. Well, what's the point of the prophecy? You see, it outlines that good materials would gradually be replaced by even better ones. And that's exactly what we have seen. You think back in the 1930s, when our brothers became so zealous in the ministry, they went out with phonographs and testimony cards. But of course, at that time, they didn't speak. Either the record did the speaking or people read the card. My mother loved to tell the story about being in the service with her pioneer partner. The door opened, she handed the man the testimony card. Of course, didn't say anything. The man started to read it. Suddenly, his wife called out, "Who's at the door?" The man said, "I don't know, there's 2 deaf women here and I'm trying to figure out what they want."
Wow, I was wondering when he was going to do that jab. Again, he's taking a jab at the women. Here, let's hear this.
Either the record did the speaking or people read the card. My mother loved to tell the story about being in the service with her pioneer partner. The door opened, she handed the man the testimony card. Of course, didn't say anything. The man started to read it. Suddenly, his wife called out, "Who's at the door?" The man said, "I don't know, there's 2 deaf women here and I'm trying to figure out what they want."
I slowed that down on purpose because I want you to see this. He likes to take jabs at women, this guy. He's given this illustration a million times. He could have said there was 2 deaf brothers at the door. Change it up a bit. Quit using the women. But no, this guy picks on the women. Be careful. Watch him.
Well, that was the reality. We weren't speaking. But how Jehovah improved the situation. He trained his people how to give an effective witness. And then we had publications like Reasoning from the Scriptures that helped us to learn how to use the Bible to reason to something even better. And I think we'd agree too that Jehovah is helping us to mature as a people. He has confidence in us. And in some lands like the Philippines, sorry, I have to mention the Philippines, we're experiencing record growth. Can you imagine a 9% increase this year with a new peak of 253,000?
So we looked up the Philippines, and it's the only one that I heard that they mentioned with growth, 9%. Only 50% of the Philippines have internet. where 98% of the US has internet, 50% of the Philippines. So until the internet comes and people get educated more, but this new tool is closely tied to the internet. They got to get onto their site. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls.
876 publishers and 12,954 baptized just in this last year. Isn't that amazing? So please know that in no way is the work slowing down. Our ministry has never been more important than it is now. So what then do these adjustments mean? Well, they do mean that our motivation for carrying out the ministry has been even more clarified. You see, we share in the ministry because we love Jehovah and because we love people. So this is the time when we want to be busy in Jehovah's work. You remember Jesus' parable of the master and the 3 slaves?
See, if the work wasn't slowing down, I'm just thinking about that question. He says it's not slowing down. They only cited the Philippines. How come they took all the growth out of the yearbooks? You can no longer see any of the growth. You know, we used to see if countries are losing members, if they had a negative growth, but they took that all out. We can no longer see any of that.
That parable was designed to teach us what we need to be doing while we're waiting for the end to come. 2 of those slaves were industrious, and they doubled the master's money. And as a result, they were blessed. We want to have that same industrious, diligent
Money
spirit.
again.
We want
Doubling
elders
the
and ministerial
master's
servants and
money.
pioneers to take the lead in the ministry. But all of us, we all in our personal ministry want to be even more zealous in what we want to accomplish in our ministry. What an exciting time this is. The governing body sincerely hopes that many more will come to join us in serving Jehovah before the end comes. And remember, Jehovah delights in rewarding his people for their faithfulness and for their generosity. So with the Great Tribulation fast approaching, have no doubt that Jehovah will soon richly reward you as we all give generously of our time and our effort to love our amazing God Jehovah and to make disciples.
With the Great Tribulation approaching. So we have the end approaching. We have an organization whose end is approaching, their end, if they don't get more money. They have this Jesus Park started. They have Ramapo started. They need money. They got to build these theaters, these studios. And now the new change is swinging people over to the internet. No more literature. So once we get people on the internet, onto JW.org, that's where we can eventually cash
You were
in.
able to see. Part 1 is of historical proportions and most exciting. Part 2 will be available on jw.org in January. Our postcard for this month is from Albania, a small country on the
Okay,
Adriatic
so
Sea.
let's see what he's saying
So
here.
with the Great Tribulation fast approaching, have no doubt that
have come and gone.
Remember, Jehovah delights to love our amazing God Jehovah and to make disciples.
As you are able to see, Part 1 is of historical proportions and most exciting. Part 2 will be available on jw.org in January.
So part 2 of this will be in January? No?
Our postcard for this month is from Albania, a small country on the Adriatic Sea. For much of its tumultuous past, foreign powers have come and gone, each bringing with it a different mix of peoples, cultures, and religions. Albania is a beautiful land, scattered with lakes and crisscrossed by rivers. Idyllic beaches dot the coastline, such as the aptly named Aquarium Beach, a beautiful spot for snorkeling.
Be a nice
The
place to go on
Katavastai
holidays.
Lagoon, the largest in the country, is the home of the Dalmatian pelican, the largest of its kind, measuring up to 1.8 meters long. In Romans chapter 15, the Apostle Paul reported that he and his companions had thoroughly preached the good news. They had traveled as far as Illyricum, a Roman province that included part of what is today Albania. It is likely that some in the region became Christians at that time, for secular history reports that Christianity took root in Albania in the 1st century. In the 1920s, some Albanians learned Bible truth while living in the United States. After getting baptized, some returned to Albania, eager to share these precious truths with family and friends. In 1928, Lazar Nason and Petros Stavro traveled from the United States back to Albania to show the photodrama of creation. Many responded, and despite political turmoil, economic reversal, and at times vigorous opposition, the number of kingdom proclaimers has grown steadily. Today, there are more than 5,400 publishers.
See, this this method of preaching, I think, is over. This pulling out literature, unless they're showing something that takes them to the site. Maybe they have something they leave people now. I don't know. Let us know in the comments. We'll be watching, but it looks like this new turn of religion is about getting people into the JW.org site.
Serving in 89 congregations. From Tirana, the capital, the branch office cares for the work in Albania and the 228 publishers in its northeast neighbor, Kosovo. Let's visit the city of Lushnja, located in west-central Albania. The Lushnja Vario congregation preaches in a territory that covers around 1/3 of the city, as well as 21 villages in the Muzice Valley. The preaching work in the villages yields good results, and meeting attendance regularly averages over 130%. They are happy to host a Romani language group. Though some publishers live in villages outside the city, they are happy to attend the meetings in person, some walking 1 hour from their home to the Kingdom Hall. The 77 publishers of the Lushnja Vario congregation send you their Christian affection and greetings. From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is JW Broadcasting.
That guy looks like a professional salesman. Take a
The
look at him.
Lushnja Vario congregation preaches in a territory that covers around 1/3 of the city, as well as
Oh, okay. There he is.
send you their Christian affection and greetings. From the
There he is. Like, I think that guy looks like a really good salesman. Like, he's a good front person. I think they're using some good front people here, and they're going to beef up the organization. This is a sales production video to me, and it's about the whole change. We're selling our religion differently. And this is a huge thing for Jehovah's Witnesses. Now they're going to roll out this new love life brochure, whatever, and that Mark Sanderson presented, and they're going to get people into the website. This is what it's about, and this whole thing is going to increase contributions. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over time with this, and that brings an end to our broadcast today. I'm going to remove that, stop that screen. And we'll look at, I'm going to change my, sorry, I got my camera, I mirrored it. There we go. Because it made me look at the screen right rather than looking that way. I was looking that way. So anyways, we have some comments up here. Smokeless Choice. Man, I bet Rutherford saw what JW's turned into today. He'd just roll over in his grave. I'd imagine he'd be pretty proud. Imagine if he resurrected, walked among the GB for inspection, he'd scream at the watchtower, and then they'd shun him. Good one. Well, thanks a lot, JM, for the donation. We really appreciate that. Awaken, tithe. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's interesting. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not there anymore. I'd be shrinking back. Oh, how am I going to afford this? Everyone's tablets. You need $1,000 tablet. Now they want over 10%. That's a lot of pressure. If they let you get an education, you could afford to give 10%. The Mormons will pay for your education. Not that I promote Mormons. I don't promote any religion. I'm just saying other religions do that. So it's interesting. Yeah. They want these people working 1 day a week and then still giving their 10%. Okay, if you could afford, if they let you get it. Okay, next one. Who's next? Jay, we can have a beard as a J-dub, but one won't have any privileges. So it's still not, you can't have a beard. See, I want to be able to have a beard and go up and give a public talk as an elder. You can't do that. You can't be a ministerial servant, a pioneer. Why can't you be a Nazarite and grow a real beard like the Nazarites? Annie 261, I'll give 1/10 of my cat. Davakan, did I say that right? Davakan? Yeah. Remember when they were thinking of disciplining fat people because they don't have self-discipline? I'm looking at your Mark Sanderson. Yeah, I know. That's in the Bible too. Their publications are likely toilet paper rolls. Not much to it. Isn't that the truth? Good one, Jackie. Okay, next. That's it. Well, that was a great show tonight. So I guess we won't be breaking this apart. I thought there was 4 this month. That's what I thought at the beginning. There was 4 of these this month, but it sounds like the next one's not until January. So I guess we were way ahead of the game when we were breaking down the 2023 meeting, but it's pretty well accurate. All they've left out was keep it confidential, keep it confidential, keep it confidential. That's all they clipped. They got most of the other stuff in there. Okay, well, that brings an end to our program tonight. We thank you guys all for being with us tonight. And yes, we're going to cover these annual meetings. We're going to cover the elders' letters once a month, and whatever else comes up on the channel. We're just going to keep covering it. So I think it's good. There's a lot of people that are leaving the organization, and they want to look at this through a different set of eyes. That's what we can do from where we sit, because we get out and we look at this whole thing and we realize it's run by 9 men. It's run by men, and it's really idol worship to worship those men to this degree. Jesus never gave us a list of rules. Nothing. He could have wrote, but he didn't. He just said love. Love covers a lot of things. And they try to fit the love in there. Well, if you're loving Jesus, you're going to be giving more. It's all about giving. The whole thing was about giving. And isn't that what the Watchtower is about? Is giving, giving, and giving more to them. And they want more. So this is going to be an interesting turn. We'll see what happens coming up in the future. We'll keep everyone posted. And we're going to close out. I guess, I don't know. What do you guys want to see? I got a couple of little outros, dancing and different things like that. Let's just go with, we'll just go with the rocket outro. We'll rock it out of here. Okay. I got to make some new ones. Anyways, folks, thanks again. And until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now. Oh, hello. My name is Vern. Join the channel. We cover JW World News, and we give you the rest of the story. Today, we're going to the Watchtower, and we have lives on Tuesday nights and Saturdays, and an excellent community. So join the channel and watch as we crash into the Watchtower. Here it is. I see it coming. Woo! Join us as we report in on the Watchtower.